அதிகமாக மாடரேட் பண்ணுற மாதிரி ஒரு சுச்சுவேஷன் இருக்காதுன்னு தான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ இட்ஸ் கோயிங் டு பி 3 ஸ்பீக்கர்ஸ் இன் திஸ் செஷன். ஸோ சார் எல்லாருமே படம் பார்த்து ஒரு அந்த படம் குறித்த சிந்தனைகளும் உணர்வுகளும் ஒரு கிளர்ந்த நிலையில் இங்கே அமர்ந்திருக்கிறோம். ஸோ இந்த உரைகள்லாம் மேற்கொண்டு நம்மளோட சிந்தனைகளை தொகுத்துக்க உதவுன்னு நினைக்கிறேன். ஸோ முதலில் A.S. பன்னீர்செல்வன் அவர்களை பேசுமாறு அழைக்கிறேன்.
நன்றி ராஜன். என்னுடைய பேப்பர் ஆங்கிலத்தில் இருக்குது. Parasakthi in 1952, Narratives for Democratic Mediations. I dedicate this paper. I dedicate this paper to the memory of my friend and an outstanding scholar in film studies, Venkatesh Chakravarti. In my biography of Kalaignar, Karunanidhi Alive, the 8th chapter partly documents the central democratic role played by the film Parasakthi in transforming the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam from being a political idea to a political reality. I also pointed out that Kalaignar's approach to Parasakthi was a conscious attempt to widen the support base of the DMK at a time when the political landscape was dominated by the Congress, the Communist Party of India, and of course Periyar's Dravida Kazhagam. Congress had the sheen of the anti-colonial struggle, but it was also the principal political opponent of the self-respect movement ever since the publication of the Non-Brahmin Manifesto in 1916. Hence, dealing with Congress was relatively easy. On the other hand, dealing with the CPI and DMK and the DK was layered, and to carve out a political space in this quadrilateral arena needed creative intervention. As I have written elsewhere, Kalaignar recognized that the DMK needed to expand its support base beyond rationalists, and its progressiveness needed to be more inclusive than that of the DK and the CPI. For instance, DK was atheist, but the DMK was against bigotry. The left used class as a sole determinant, but failed to understand the humiliation due to caste. 7 of his films during this phase helped the party to reach out and expand its base, create a secular body politic, the core of which was not just atheist but free from bigotry. It was a classic moment where he realized the difference between conciliation and compromise. Kalaigner's politics has self-respect at its core. His fight against superstition and various forms of obscurantism had clear strategy of not alienating a vast section of the populace, but to speak their language to effect change. Much has been written about the role played by Sukumar Sen, the first election commissioner of India, in ushering in a system to ascertain the will of the people. Former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi has explained the complexities of the first general elections of 1952, and it is important to understand the importance of the 1952 elections to understand the importance of the film Parasakthi. Writing about the first elections, Mr. Qureshi wrote, I quote, "The backdrop of the 1952 election was as much a strategic consideration as it was a political one. While India became independent in 1947, it remained a dominion. A British Governor General remained at the head of the Indian political system, greater in stature than the Prime Minister. As the Constitution promulgated on November 26, 1949, came into effect on January 26, 1950, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was anxious to get the elections underway as soon as possible. Democracy and the establishment of the will of the people were the main premises on which the struggle for independence was waged, and without elections, that premise would remain unfulfilled." His book, Undocumented Wonder, The Making of the Great Indian Election, records the stellar role played by Sukumar Sen, whom he considers an unsung hero. In 1952, all political parties had popular support and were forced to realign themselves and to find new approach to define their polity. the Congress's major concern was to get ready for the post-colonial, post-partition India. Political scientist Rajni Kothari has documented the transition within the Congress that made it a dominant political party. The Communist Party of India, its participation in the first election was clouded by many uncertainties. The CPI's decision not to join the Quit India movement, the call given by Mahatma Gandhi, had tarnished its image. It also embarked on a major internal transition of moving away from revolution through armed struggle to the defense of parliamentary communism. Periyar's position was comparatively easy as he and his Dravida Kazhagam were not part of the electoral politics. Hence, the need for adjustment and realignment was not even a remote concern for him or his party. On the other hand, the DMK, which was only 3 years old organization at the time of the election, had to express its opposition to the drafting of the constitution as it was implemented without assenting the views of the Dravidians. The party was also aware of the fact that it had not reached a threshold of popular support despite its growing acceptance across the state. The film Parasakthi should be seen, read, and understood in this historical context. Before embarking on an interpretative journey, let us look at some of the basic facts regarding the film. As I recorded in the biography, of all his screenplays, Parasakthi stands out for more than one reasons as a defining moment in the history of the DMK and the emergence of Kalaignar as an ideologue. Produced in 1952 by the mainstream production house AVM, directed by Krishnan Panju, it was based on a play by Pavalar Balasundaram. It helped the DMK clearly demarcate itself from DK and open up spaces hitherto unavailable for the movement. The huge section of the population who were believers but not bigots and not apologists for the excesses committed in the name of religion. The virulent attack by the upper caste against the film neither took into account the accommodative space the film generated, nor was it aware of the criticism against the film from within the radical section of the movement, arguing that it diluted the atheism of Periyar. Given the importance of the film, it ought to have received greater scholarly attention. However, barring M.S. Pandian's exhaustive essay on the film, Parasakthi, Life and Times of a DMK film, in the Economic and Political Weekly in 1991, locating the film as a marker that differentiated the reformist DMK from the radical DK, it largely missed being the radar of post-colonial scholarship. It is important to understand that the narrative structure deployed by Karunanidhi in the film to understand and its full political and cultural import. It basically the reverse of an epic narrative. In epics, the main element is the exile of the protagonist, and the resolution comes about with the end of the exile and their happy return. Parasakti starts with an end of the exile, in a sense, as an anticlimactic opening, when protagonist Gunasegaran, played brilliantly by the debutant Jwaji Ganesan, returns to Tamil Nadu from Burma. The return is not a happy one. The situation at home that forced people to seek better prospects in exile has become worse, and it further fragments the family, creates a much larger cleavage between the rich and the poor, and the state missionary has no real plans to integrate the repatriates. The naming of the characters, the deployment of the songs extolling the virtues of Dravida Nadu by Bharatidasan, the use of the common bird, the crow, as a metaphor to drive home the importance of interdependency in a democracy are some of the stylistic devices used by Karunanidhi to capture the imagination of the Tamils. For instance, Kalyani, the sister of protagonist and husband, want to name the child Panneerselvam if it is a boy and Nagamai if it is a girl. The allusions are clearly political. Panneerselvam denotes a well-known Justice Party leader, Sir A.T. Panneerselvam, and Nagamai, the activist of the Dravidian movement and wife of Periyar EVR. The popular Kaka song, the Crow song, rendered in a soulful manner by Chidambaram Jayaraman, invokes the memory of the Sangam poet Kakai Padiniyar and it effectively deals with sharing, interdependency, and addressing hunger as a fundamental developmental issue before a newly independent country. The film, in a sense, documents the shift from Periyarist maximalist positions to unauthorized realistic fallback positions. As Pondian points out in his essay, while Parasakti did attack religion in definitive terms, it also at once exhibited certain ambivalence about religion. This ambivalence comes out candidly in Gunashekharan's vituperative monologue in the court, almost at the close of the film. The lengthy monologue, let me quote, I created trouble in the temple, not because there should not be temples, but because temples should not become the den of dangerous men. I attacked Pujari not because he is a devotee, but because devotion has become a daytime disguise. This, of course, as Pandian rightly asserts, is only a muted criticism of the religious order. It absolves religion and religious devotion, but criticizes only their misuse. In fact, the film was passed by the censor board because some of the members thought that the film had a hidden message of faith and belief. The sequence that gave them the feeling of the following: Kuppan, hearing the cries of Kalyani from within the Parasakti temple, rings the bell frantically. As if to answer the cries of Kalyani, help comes in time from behind the idol, from the scantum. On the screen, the image of the Parasakti is superimposed on the ringing bell, wrote Pandian. Hence, the key issue we need to remember is the distinction between the DK and the DMK on their respective positions towards faith. While the DK rejected religion in toto, DMK rejected religious bigotry. The 1953, a year after the release of Parasakti, Periyar led a protest by breaking the idols of Pillayar. Anna's response was akin to the dialogues of Parasakti. Anna said, I would neither break a Pillayar statue or a coconut. This fine distinction is the one that propelled Kalaignar as the chief minister to nominate the reformist pontiff Kundrakudi Adigalar to the Legislative Council to introduce Tamil Archanai and to legislate a law that permitted priesthood for all, regardless of caste. The challenges the government had to face is one example of the political wrestling between a reformist political imagination and a status quoist judiciary. Pandian's essay establishes how, in 1952, Parasakti stood as a sign of the coming days of a parliamentary Dravidian movement. While the film still carried some of the radical tendencies found in the early Dravidian movement, it was at once a signboard in the historical course of Dravidian movement, pointing to the consensual politics of the DMK was destined to play in Tamil Nadu, he wrote. Pandian's piece was translated into Tamil and was published in full in Murasoli. When asked to comment on the piece, Muralidharan said that while the article captures various important markers in the film, it did not understand the emphasis on the role of the courts in our daily lives. The idea of having court hearing as a climatic piece with a 5 minute long monologue is a recognition of the constitutional compulsions of of political parties committed to social reform, which was different from the revolutionary politics of the left and the radical politics of the Dravida Kazhagam. During an informal interaction, Kalaignar invoked the image of a soldier carrying a sword and a shield to explain its politics. He said, there are moments when you need to wield the sword, and there are moments when you need to defend yourself with the shield. I have done both, and I don't see any contradictions here. You need to be alive to wage a war for social justice. His long life indeed bears testimony to this deployment of both the sword and the shield. There were very clear distinction in his mind and as an extension in his politics between conciliation and compromise. While he endorsed a reasonable conciliation, he was not prepared to compromise on his fundamental principles. The imagery of the shield and the sword comes alive in Parasakti. A place of employment may provide financial security, but can also be a place of sexual harassment. A place of worship may provide solace, but also be a site for exploitation. Courts, which remains the instruments of law, at times provide succor and at most times remain oblivious to human suffering. A return from the exile is not always a fruitful culmination, but it may be a stark beginning. In a sense, the film teaches us not to be intransigent, but to be flexible to negotiate and secure our just rights. The central lesson one gets from the film is that negotiation is a constant process and not an end game. It is widely different from revolution where the regime change is the goal. In politics of social justice, the struggle never ends. It's an unending journey. The desire to improve, the desire to advance, the desire to progress, the desire to transform remain valid even after achieving success. The stagnation in this regard in reality means losing the hard won gains. The impact of the film was profound, and the Congress party did not take its reach lightly. It launched a multi-pronged attack against the film and Kalaignar in particular. Dinamani Kadar, a weekly from the Indian Express group owned by Ramnath Goenka, was at the forefront of attacking the film. Goenka was the Congress candidate in the 1952 elections from the Tindivanam constituency. It's another matter that he lost to Thirukural Munusami, who was backed by the DMK. There was a scathing cartoon in the magazine. It was a depiction of a woman in a disheveled clothes with a headline that read Parabrahmam, with a second deck that read Story and Abuse Dayanidhi. Kalaignar responded by writing a political play Parabrahmam, which was a parody on journalism and politics as practiced by congressmen. The play was staged in more than 100 places across the state. Film also teaches us some valuable lessons in creative excursions to subvert the dominant narratives and the restrictive censors. Much before the 1975 emergency, this film provided us the tools for creatively confronting the forces of status quo. Pandian documents the arguments of the critics of the film. He wrote, interestingly, the critics even pointed out that the film had carefully deployed ingeniously devised techniques to bypass the scissors of the censors. One of them reasoned that the makers of the film were deliberately showing a madman abusing the gods and the government as to escape censorship. She claimed the film converts a normal man into one of madness because censor board would not pass the film if its abuses were delivered by a person in his normal self. Another petitioner, by now a familiar critic, titled interestingly Tamilan, made a reference to why the story of the film was located in pre-independence 1942. Here, the central political import is that by making either a temporal or a spatial journey, one can address the contemporary political reality in an analogous manner. People understood the full import of the every political and cultural reference because they were not passive recipient of moving images but active listeners to the tone and the tenor of the film. In a sense, Parasakti remains a prescient indicator of how DMK would keep the space for democratic dissent open even when there is an overreach of the state. The defense of the DMK in 1976 during the emergency is an illustrative case. By 1976, censorship had become more strident, and even to mention of unauthorized name was not permitted by the authorities. Kalaignar wrote a series of critically accusing articles against the emergency and got it printed as a pamphlet at a French press. He also got another notice printed that he would launch an Arapo, a peaceful struggle, on 2nd June. On the appointed day, he started marching from near US Consulate General's office towards Anna statue, distributing the Arapo pamphlet. This walk of less than 3 kilometers not only attracted the attention of the people but also galvanized the party cadres and those who were not arrested assembled in the heart of the city. But Kalingar's biggest journalistic defiance was the publication of a cartoon panel. Chellappan, one of the finest cartoonists of Tamil Nadu, created a panel titled Metamorphosis, featuring Indira Gandhi strolling transformed into Hitler. While this cartoon was republished in the magazine Newsweek, the government did not permit any of Chellappan's cartoon to appear till the revocation of the emergency. At deeper level, the film Parasakthi had prepared the DMK cadres and people of Tamil Nadu to bravely confront the excesses of the emergency. In 1982, the New York Times carried an interesting article, Politics in Film, How Movie Makers Handle Hot Issues. That article provided some broad contours for what constitutes a success in making a political film. The article said the filmmaker who chooses to make a political film is often a person with a cause or an ideal. But how to translate these into a film that works convincingly and commercially? It's a major challenge. How do you convey ideas about such abstract matters as relationship between groups of people and institutions or about ideological philosophies without losing drama and the audience interest? How do you communicate a point of view without resorting to propagandist distortions? Probably if the author, Robert Slaker, who taught film at New York University, had an opportunity to see Parasakti, he would have cited the film as an ideal example of handling these tricky questions. The powerful, the powerful script of the film ensures that the dramatic element is kept intact and the audience attention is retained from the very first frame, which as a strong by Bharatidasan, till the last frame of a Mahanadu, a political conference. In his essay for Frontline magazine, headlined Cinema for a Cause, Kalanger explained his politics and filmmaking in a succinct manner. Kalanger wrote, I use film to spread rationalist ideas among people. My objective in writing for films was to avoid obscenity and highlight the principles of self respect and thereby appeal to the intellect of the people. The respect for the general public's intellect is the one that made Parasakti a significant political film, both as an artistic success as well as a commercial success.